A black boy helps Messi with a car breakdown, not realizing that this incident would change his life forever. What happened the next day was a real miracle for him. Subscribe to the channel. Not to miss new stories, put a like, share this video, and write in the comments where you're watching this from. The humid air of Miami clung to the narrow streets like a second skin, wrapping the city in its perpetual tropical embrace. In one of the older neighborhoods, far from the glitz of the beachfront and the towering skyscrapers, Eli James lived in a modest house with his parents. The paint on the walls of their home had long since faded, peeling away in some corners, and the roof sometimes leaked during the frequent rains. But to Eli, it wasn't just a house, it was a haven, filled with the laughter of his mother and the warm, steady presence of his father. Eli was 14, a wiry boy with dark brown skin and tightly coiled hair that often stuck to his forehead after hours spent running under the sun. His eyes gleamed with a mixture of determination and mischief, a reflection of his unyielding dreams. Despite their financial struggles, Eli carried himself with an unshakable energy, as though the weight of his family's hardships couldn't touch the fire burning within him. His father, David James, worked long hours as a mechanic in a small garage on the outskirts of the neighborhood. The garage was more of a makeshift workshop than a professional establishment, cluttered with old tires, rusted tools, and a perpetual layer of grease. Eli often helped his father after school, learning the intricate dance of engines and gears. Though he respected his father's craft, his heart belonged to a different rhythm, the rhythm of a soccer ball bouncing against the ground. When Eli wasn't at school or the garage, he could be found on a nearby vacant lot that served as the neighborhood's makeshift soccer field. It was a patch of uneven dirt and grass, bordered by crumbling fences and dotted with stray trash. Bricks served as goalposts, and the ball they used had more patches than original material. But none of that mattered to Eli and the other kids who played there. For them, it was sacred ground. Eli's love for soccer wasn't just a hobby. It was an escape. When he was on the field, dribbling past imaginary defenders or celebrating a scrappy goal with his friends, he could forget about the bills his mother worried over late at night. He could push aside the ache in his arms after a day of carrying heavy tools at the garage. On the field, he was free. His mother, Maria, often watched him from their front porch when she had a rare moment of rest. She worked double shifts at a local diner, her feet aching from long hours of standing. She didn't fully understand her son's obsession with soccer, but she saw the light in his eyes whenever he played, and she couldn't bring herself to discourage him. One evening, after a long day at the garage, Eli returned home covered in grease. His father was still at work, trying to finish a last-minute repair for a loyal customer who'd been coming to the garage for years. Maria handed Eli a plate of rice and beans, the aroma filling the small kitchen. Eli ate quickly, barely tasting the food, eager to head out to the lot before the last rays of sunlight disappeared. "Don't stay out too late," Maria called after him as he bolted out the door, "and be careful." Eli waved back but didn't slow down. The lot was already buzzing with activity when he arrived. Kids of various ages were there, some barefoot, others wearing mismatched sneakers. They greeted Eli with cheers and jeers, recognizing him as one of the most skilled players among them. He quickly joined a game, weaving through defenders with the ease of someone who lived and breathed the sport. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the lot, Eli's thoughts drifted. He wasn't thinking about the game or his friends' shouts. He was thinking about the gleaming stadiums he saw on TV, where players like Lionel Messi performed magic on the pitch. In those moments, he imagined himself in their place, wearing a professional jersey and hearing the roar of a crowd calling his name. The game ended, and Eli sat on the edge of the lot, catching his breath. One of his friends, Diego, plopped down beside him, clutching the patched-up ball. "You played like a beast today, man," Diego said, grinning. "One day, they'll be talking about you on TV." Eli laughed, though the thought made his chest tighten with a mix of hope and fear. "Yeah, maybe," he said more to himself than to Diego. The walk home was quiet, the streets mostly empty save for the occasional car passing by. As Eli approached his house, he saw the soft glow of the television through the living room window. His mother had likely fallen asleep on the couch. He slipped inside, careful not to wake her, and headed to his small bedroom. The walls of Eli's room were bare except for a single poster of Messi, slightly crumpled but proudly displayed above his bed. It was a gift from his father, who had found it discarded at the garage. Eli stared at the poster for a long time that night, his mind racing with thoughts of what could be. He wanted to believe that his dreams weren't out of reach, but the reality of his life often whispered otherwise. As sleep claimed him, Eli dreamed of a game. He was on a field far grander than the lot in his neighborhood, the roar of a crowd ringing in his ears. He wore a jersey with his name on the back, and in front of him was Messi, smiling as if to say, "You belong here." When morning came, the dream felt like a distant memory, but the fire it had ignited burned brighter than ever. The sun hung low in the Miami sky, casting an orange glow over the bustling streets as the day wound to a close. Eli was on his way home from the lot, his well-worn sneakers slapping against the uneven pavement. His bag, filled with a deflated soccer ball and an old water bottle, swung from his shoulder. The sounds of the city enveloped him: car horns, distant laughter, and the occasional hum of conversation from street vendors. As he neared a busy intersection, Eli noticed a sleek black car stalled awkwardly at the corner. Its hazard lights blinked in rhythmic defiance, and the driver, a man in a simple t-shirt and dark jeans, stood beside the open hood. Cars honked as they squeezed past, drivers throwing impatient gestures. The man seemed frustrated, glancing at his watch and running a hand through his dark, slightly disheveled hair. Eli slowed his pace, curious but cautious. He watched as the man leaned into the engine compartment, muttering something inaudible before shaking his head. It was clear the situation was beyond him. Pedestrians walked by, some sparing a glance, but most hurrying on as if the scene was invisible. Eli hesitated. His father had always told him to look for opportunities to help, but this man didn't look like someone from their neighborhood. The car was pristine, a model far beyond anything Eli had ever worked on in his dad's garage, but as he saw the man's frustration deepen, Eli's natural instinct to assist took over. "Hey, need some help?" Eli called out, his voice steady despite the small knot of nerves in his chest. The man looked up, his expression shifting from irritation to mild surprise. He straightened, taking in the sight of the boy, a thin, scrappy kid with a streak of dirt on his cheek and a bag slung over one shoulder. "You know about cars?" the man asked, his accent faint but noticeable. Eli couldn't quite place it, but it had a musical quality to it. Eli shrugged. "A little. My dad's a mechanic. I help him out sometimes." The man glanced at his watch again, clearly in a hurry, and stepped aside. "Be my guest," he said, gesturing to the open hood. Eli set his bag down and leaned into the engine compartment. He quickly scanned the setup, his fingers tracing the belts and wires with practiced ease. he murmured, mostly to himself. The problem wasn't immediately obvious, but years of watching his dad work had taught him to think critically. After a few minutes, Eli straightened. "Looks like your serpentine belt slipped. I think I can fix it temporarily, but it'll need a proper repair soon." The man blinked at him, clearly impressed. "You can fix it? Just like that?" Eli nodded, his confidence growing. "I've done it before. Do you have any tools?" The man retrieved a small toolkit from the trunk. Eli got to work, using a screwdriver and some ingenuity to reposition the belt. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked under the fading light, but his hands moved with the precision of someone far older than his years. As Eli tightened the last screw, the man peered over his shoulder. "You really know what you're doing," he said, his tone almost admiring. Eli grinned, wiping his hands on his shorts. "All set. Try starting it." The man slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine roared to life, smooth and steady. He stepped out, a broad smile spreading across his face. "You're a lifesaver," the man said, extending his hand. "Thank you. What's your name?" "Eli," the boy replied, shaking his hand. "No problem. Just doing what my dad taught me." The man paused, looking at Eli with an intensity that made the boy slightly self-conscious. "You're good with cars. What else are you good at?" Eli chuckled nervously. "I play soccer, mostly, when I'm not helping my dad." At the mention of soccer, something flickered in the man's eyes, a mix of curiosity and recognition. "Soccer? You play a lot?" "Every chance I get," Eli said, his enthusiasm breaking through. "It's my favorite thing in the world." The man smiled, but there was something almost wistful about it. "That's a good thing to love." Eli hesitated, then asked, "Are you late for something? You seemed pretty stressed out earlier." The man nodded, glancing at his watch again. "I have a training session. Very important." Eli tilted his head, intrigued. "Are you a coach or something?" The man chuckled, shaking his head. "Not quite." Before Eli could ask more, a group of teenagers walking by suddenly erupted in excited whispers. "Oh my God, it's him!" one of them exclaimed. "That's Lionel Messi." Eli froze. He turned back to the man he had just helped, his heart pounding as the realization hit. The simple t-shirt and jeans, the understated demeanor, it had all masked the fact that he was standing face to face with one of the greatest soccer players in the world. "You're," Eli stammered, struggling to find his words. "You're Messi?" Messi smiled, almost sheepishly. "Yes, and you, Eli, just saved my day." For a moment, Eli couldn't speak. The man who had been his idol for as long as he could remember was standing right in front of him, thanking him. It felt surreal, like a dream he might wake up from at any moment. Messi reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "You've done something amazing for me. I want to return the favor. Tomorrow, come to the Inter Miami training ground. Be my guest." Eli stared at the card, his hands trembling slightly as he took it. The reality of what had just happened began to sink in. "Are you serious?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Messi nodded. "Very serious. I'll see you there." As the car pulled away, Eli stood rooted to the spot, the card clutched tightly in his hand. His mind raced with questions, excitement, and a healthy dose of disbelief. It wasn't until he was halfway home that he realized he hadn't even said thank you. That night, Eli lay awake in his bed, staring at the crumpled Messi poster on his wall. For the first time, it didn't feel like a distant fantasy. It felt like a door had opened, a door that might just lead to everything he'd ever dreamed of. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon when Eli awoke the next day. Sleep had been a stranger to him all night, his excitement too overwhelming to allow his body to rest. He rolled over, and there it was, the business card Lionel Messi had handed him. He had placed it carefully on the nightstand, almost as if afraid it might vanish if he wasn't careful. The simple white card seemed to glow in the soft morning light, and the sight of it filled him with equal parts excitement and disbelief. "Eli, time for breakfast!" his mother called from the kitchen, her voice pulling him from his thoughts. He quickly dressed, threw a glance at the Messi poster on his wall, and then snatched up the card before heading out of his room. In the kitchen, his mother was preparing her usual breakfast: eggs, toast, and a small portion of rice. Maria looked up and gave him a warm smile, but the dark circles under her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. She had just returned from the diner after a long night shift. "You're up early," she said, raising an eyebrow as she set a plate in front of him. "You didn't get much sleep, did you?" Eli grinned, barely able to contain his excitement. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the business card, holding it out for her to see. "What's this?" she asked, taking the card with a confused expression. "It's an invitation, Mama," Eli said, his voice bursting with enthusiasm. "I helped a man fix his car yesterday, and he gave me this. He wants me to come to the Inter-Miami training ground today." Maria looked at the card, her brows furrowing as she read the name printed on it. "Lionel Messi?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Eli nodded vigorously. "Yes, Mama, the Lionel Messi. I helped him, and he said he wanted to thank me. He invited me to come watch them train." Maria blinked, staring at the card as if it were written in another language. "Lionel Messi?" she repeated, this time with a hint of wonder in her voice. She looked at Eli, searching his face for any sign that this might be some kind of elaborate prank. "It's real, Mama," Eli insisted, his smile widening. "He said it himself. He wants me to be there." Maria's eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern. She set the card down on the table and reached across to take Eli's hand. "This is incredible, Eli," she said softly, "but you need to be careful. I don't want you to get your hopes up too high." Eli nodded, understanding her caution. "I know, Mama, but I have to try. It might be my only chance." She sighed, her fingers gently squeezing his. "I understand. Just promise me you'll be careful." Eli leaned over and kissed her cheek. "I promise, Mama." By the time Eli finished his breakfast, the excitement had grown to the point where he could hardly sit still. He grabbed his old sneakers, still covered in dirt from the lot, and raced out the door, the business card safely tucked into his pocket. The training ground was on the other side of town, and he had to take 2 buses to get there. Each stop seemed to drag on forever, and his heart pounded harder with every passing minute. When he finally arrived, he stood for a moment in front of the large gated entrance. The Inter-Miami training complex was like nothing Eli had ever seen. The grass was perfectly manicured, the air buzzing with the distant sound of whistles and the unmistakable rhythm of a ball being kicked. A security guard was stationed at the gate, eyeing him curiously. "Can I help you, kid?" the guard asked, stepping forward. Eli swallowed, suddenly feeling the weight of where he was and what he was trying to do. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Messi's card, holding it out for the guard to see. I'm here to see Lionel Messi," he stammered, his voice sounding small. The guard looked at the card, then back at Eli, his expression softening slightly. "Wait here a moment," he said before speaking into a radio. Eli's heart felt like it was about to burst out of his chest as the seconds dragged on. He glanced around, taking in the sight of the large fields, the players in their uniforms, and the massive goal posts that looked so much bigger than the makeshift bricks they used at the lot. It was like stepping into another world. After what felt like an eternity, the guard waved him through. "All right, kid, you're clear. Head straight over there," he said, pointing towards a small cluster of people. Eli nodded, whispering a thank you before stepping through the gate and onto the training grounds. The grass felt soft beneath his feet as he walked, and his gaze darted around, trying to take in everything at once. There were a dozen players on the field, all of them moving with the grace and precision of professionals. Then he saw him, Messi, standing with a coach, discussing something. Eli's breath caught in his throat. Messi spotted Eli and immediately broke into a smile. He waved, motioning for the boy to come closer. Eli felt his legs move almost of their own accord, and soon he was standing in front of the legend. "Eli?" Messi greeted him warmly, extending his hand. "You made it." Eli shook his hand, still feeling like he might be dreaming. "Yes, sir. I can't believe I'm really here." Messi chuckled. "No need to call me sir. Just Messi is fine." He placed a hand on Eli's shoulder, turning him towards the field. "I want you to meet some of the guys." The next few minutes felt like a blur as Messi introduced Eli to his teammates. They all greeted him with warm smiles, some patting him on the back or ruffling his hair. Despite the star power around him, there was a casualness to it all that put Eli at ease. They were friendly, almost as if he belonged there. The training session began, and Messi led Eli to the sidelines where he could watch. The drills were intense. Fast-paced passes, intricate footwork, and coordinated team plays. Eli watched with wide eyes, his admiration growing with every touch of the ball. The players moved as if they were in perfect sync, their focus unbroken and their passion palpable. After about an hour, Messi jogged over to where Eli was sitting, a sheen of sweat glistening on his forehead. "What do you think?" he asked, taking a seat beside the boy. Eli could barely find the words. "It's amazing," he said, shaking his head. "The way you all move, the way you pass, it's like magic." Messi smiled, clearly pleased. "It's a lot of hard work, Eli, but I can see you have that same fire in you." He paused, studying Eli's expression. "Would you like to join us for a bit? Show us what you've got?" Eli's eyes widened and his heart skipped a beat. "You mean play with you?" Messi nodded, his smile widening. "Of course. We'd love to see what you can do." For a moment, Eli felt panic welling up inside him. What if he messed up? What if he embarrassed himself in front of Messi and all these professionals? But then he thought about his father, his mother, and all those long hours at the lot. He had dreamed of this moment for as long as he could remember, and now it was right in front of him. He took a deep breath and nodded. "I'd love to." Messi led Eli onto the field, and the other players made room for him. One of the coaches handed Eli a practice jersey, which he pulled on over his head. The material felt smooth and cool against his skin, so different from the sweaty, worn-out shirts he usually played in. He was handed a ball, and the moment it touched his foot, something shifted inside him. The nerves were still there, but they were drowned out by something stronger: determination. The first few touches were tentative, testing the feel of the ball, the weight of it on the pristine grass. But then, as Messi called out to him, everything seemed to fall into place. Eli began to move, dribbling, passing, and even making a few feints he had practiced countless times back on his dusty lot. The players gave him space, and soon he was weaving between them, each movement more confident than the last. Messi gave him an approving nod. "You've got talent, Eli," he said as they paused for a water break, "but more importantly, you've got heart, and that's what really matters." Eli beamed, the words filling him with a warmth that seemed to spread throughout his entire body. He had dreamed of this moment, and now, standing on the field with his idol, he realized it was better than he had ever imagined. As the session ended, Messi walked Eli to the edge of the field, where they sat down on the cool grass. Messi reached into his bag and pulled out something that made Eli's breath catch in his throat. A pair of cleats, bright and new. "These are for you," Messi said, handing them over. "I noticed your shoes could use an upgrade." Eli took the cleats, his hands trembling slightly. He looked up at Messi, his eyes wide with emotion. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Messi smiled and placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. "I also spoke with the coaches here," he said. "They're willing to give you a chance. You can train with the academy if you want. I'll take care of the costs." Eli's eyes filled with tears and he quickly wiped them away, nodding. I don't know what to say." "Just keep working hard," Messi said, "and never stop believing in yourself." Eli nodded again, his heart swelling with gratitude and hope. As he left the training ground that day, his new cleats in his bag and Messi's words echoing in his mind, he felt like the door to his dreams had truly opened. It was up to him now to step through and see where it led. Eli stood at the entrance of the Inter-Miami Academy, the sun casting a warm glow across the well-manicured fields beyond the gate. His new cleats were in his bag, carefully wrapped in the jersey Messi had given him, almost like a treasure. This was his first official day as a trainee at the academy. He had spent the entire previous night rehearsing what he would do and say, and yet, as he stood there, the weight of where he was hit him all over again. The training complex looked massive up close, larger and more intimidating than Eli had remembered from the day he first arrived. His stomach did an uneasy flip, but he took a deep breath and pushed forward, his feet carrying him over the threshold into a new world. Around him, kids his age, and even younger, were dressed in bright practice gear, their movements precise as they warmed up and kicked balls back and forth. The fields were green and flawless, the goalposts standing tall like sentinels, and Eli couldn't help but feel a mixture of awe and nervousness. These were kids who had probably been training here their entire lives, with professional coaches and expensive gear. "Hey, are you Eli?" Eli spun around to see a man in his late 20s, wearing an official Inter-Miami track jacket and holding a clipboard. His face was friendly, and there was a whistle hanging around his neck. Eli swallowed, trying to keep his voice steady as he nodded. "Yeah, I'm Eli." The man smiled and offered his hand. "I'm Coach Vargas. Messi told us about you. Come on, I'll show you around." Coach Vargas led Eli across the field, pointing out different areas: the locker rooms, the nutrition station, and the training fields. Everything was well organized, efficient. It felt like a different universe from the chaotic, dusty lot Eli had grown used to. The coach stopped at a group of boys who were practicing passes in a tight circle. Their movements were fluid, almost rehearsed, and the ball barely touched the ground as they kicked it between them. Eli felt a pang of anxiety tighten his chest. He wasn't used to this level of precision. These boys looked like they belonged here. "All right, boys," Coach Vargas called out. "We've got a new player joining us today. This is Eli." The boys turned, their eyes evaluating him in a glance. Some nodded in acknowledgement, others seemed indifferent. Eli couldn't help but notice a couple of them exchange glances, as if silently sizing him up. Coach Vargas gave Eli an encouraging pat on the back. "Why don't you jump in, Eli? Let's see what you've got." Eli nodded, his mouth suddenly dry. He stepped into the circle, and one of the boys, a tall kid with sharp features and an unmistakable air of confidence, passed him the ball. It came at him fast, faster than he'd expected, and Eli had to scramble to trap it under his foot. He stumbled slightly, but managed to regain control, quickly kicking it off to the next player. There was a muffled snicker from somewhere in the group, and Eli's face flushed. Eli looked down, a small smile forming on his lips. "Thank you, Coach. But remember," Vargas continued, his gaze steady, "this isn't just about skill. It's about heart, about how much you're willing to give. There will be setbacks, moments when you want to quit. But if you push through those moments, you'll find out what you're really capable of." Eli nodded, the coach's words resonating deep within him. He knew this journey wouldn't be easy. He knew there would be days when he'd want to give up, when the pressure would feel too heavy, but he also knew that he had already come so far, that he had a chance, however slim, to make his dream a reality. And he wasn't going to let it slip away. As he walked home that evening, the sun setting behind the Miami skyline, Eli felt a sense of determination settle over him. This was his chance, and he was going to make the most of it, no matter what it took. He thought of his father, still at the garage, working late into the night. He thought of his mother, resting between her shifts, always putting her family first. They were his strength, his reason to keep going. Eli knew he still had a long way to go, but for the first time it felt like he wasn't just dreaming. He was on the path to making those dreams come true, one step at a time. And as he glanced down at his new cleats shining in the dimming light, he smiled. This was just the beginning. The weeks at the Inter-Miami Academy had begun to fall into a rhythm. Early morning practices, drills throughout the day, the occasional scrimmage in the afternoons. Eli was slowly finding his place among the other players. His skills were improving, his confidence growing, and the uneasy feeling of being an outsider was beginning to fade. He still had a lot to prove, but he was starting to feel like he belonged. One Thursday afternoon, practice was particularly grueling. The sun blazed overhead, relentless and unforgiving, and the coaches pushed the players harder than ever. They ran sprints, then more sprints, then did drills designed to test their agility and endurance. Eli's legs burned, his lungs felt like they were on fire, but he pushed on, matching the older boys stride for stride. "Again, keep moving." Coach Vargas's voice cut through the air like a whip. Eli glanced to his side, where Jordan was running with him. The older boy was barely showing signs of fatigue, his steps smooth and even. Eli tried to match his rhythm, but his muscles screamed for rest. He was close, so close to keeping up, but with each step he felt himself lagging. By the end of the drill, Eli was exhausted, his legs trembling beneath him. He bent over, hands on his knees, gasping for breath. The other boys began to gather their things, joking and nudging each other, their energy still unbroken. "Come on, new kid, you've got to keep up," Jordan said as he walked past, a hint of a smile on his face. His voice wasn't mocking, it was more like a challenge. Eli forced himself to stand up straight, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "I'm trying," he muttered under his breath. Just as Eli was about to make his way to the sideline to get some water, Coach Vargas approached him. The coach studied him for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Eli, come with me. I need to talk to you," he said. Eli's heart sank. He followed Vargas to the edge of the field, his stomach churning. The coach led him to a small bench under the shade of a nearby tree. They sat down, the sounds of practice fading into the background. "You're doing well, Eli," Vargas began, his tone firm but not unkind. "But I've noticed something. You push yourself hard, maybe harder than anyone else here. But I think you're forgetting one thing." Eli looked up, his brow furrowed. "What's that, coach?" "You need to play smart, not just hard," Vargas said, his gaze steady. "It's not just about running until you drop. It's about knowing when to conserve energy, when to move, and how to move. If you burn out now, you won't have anything left for the real games." Eli nodded, trying to take in the advice. It made sense, of course. He had been running as if every practice was his last, desperate to prove he belonged. He hadn't thought about pacing himself, about finding the balance between effort and efficiency. "Thanks, Coach. I'll try to work on that," he said, his voice a little more subdued. Vargas gave him a nod. "Good. Now get some rest. You've earned it." Eli stood up and walked back towards the field, his thoughts swirling. He had been so focused on proving himself, on keeping up with the other boys, that he hadn't realized he was pushing himself to the limit every single day. He needed to be smarter, not just stronger. The next day, Eli arrived at practice with a new mindset. He focused on his positioning, on his movements, making sure he wasn't wasting energy on unnecessary sprints. He paid more attention to the way the older boys moved, watching Jordan especially, noting how he conserved his energy and then exploded at just the right moment. It wasn't easy. Eli had to fight against his own instincts, his desire to give 110% all the time, but as the practice went on, he began to feel the difference. His legs weren't as heavy, his passes were more accurate, and he had more energy towards the end of the session. It was a small victory, but it was enough to give him hope. Things were starting to look up, but just as Eli began to settle into this new rhythm, life threw him a curveball. One Saturday morning, during a particularly intense scrimmage, Eli went in for a tackle. He saw an opportunity, a split-second opening to take the ball from an opposing player. He lunged, his body twisting, his foot extending. But at the last moment, the other player shifted, and Eli's foot landed awkwardly. Pain shot through his ankle, sharp and immediate. Eli crumpled to the ground, a cry escaping his lips. The game stopped, players gathering around him, concerned voices mixing in the air. "Eli, you all right?" someone called out. He tried to stand, but the pain was too much. He fell back, clutching his ankle, his heart pounding in his chest. Coach Vargas rushed over, his face grim as he knelt beside Eli. "Don't move, Eli. Let's get you checked out." Two of the assistant coaches helped Eli off the field, his arm draped over their shoulders as he hobbled towards the sidelines. His ankle throbbed with every step, and a sense of dread settled over him. He had felt pain before, bruises, bumps, scrapes, but this was different. This was deeper, more insistent. They laid him down on a bench, and the team's medic examined his ankle, her fingers probing gently at the swollen joint. Eli winced, biting down on his lip to keep from crying out. "It's a sprain," she said finally, her voice calm but serious. "You're going to need to rest it for a while. No practice for at least a couple of weeks." Eli's heart sank, a lump forming in his throat. No practice? He had just started to feel like he was finding his place here, just started to prove himself. And now he was being benched. The medic wrapped his ankle in a compression bandage, her hands moving quickly and efficiently. "You'll need to ice it, keep it elevated, and rest. We'll check on it in a week." Eli nodded, his eyes stinging with unshed tears. He hated this feeling, the feeling of being helpless, of having his progress ripped away from him. The other boys resumed practice, their laughter and shouts echoing across the field, and Eli watched from the sidelines, feeling the weight of his frustration pressing down on him. Later that evening, as he limped home, his father met him at the door. David's eyes widened when he saw the bandage, and he quickly helped Eli inside, guiding him to the couch. "What happened, Eli?" his father asked, concern etched across his face. "It's just a sprain, Dad," Eli said, trying to sound nonchalant, though his voice wavered. "I'll be fine." David nodded, but the worry in his eyes didn't fade. He sat down beside Eli, silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice soft. "You know, when I was your age, I got hurt too." Eli glanced at his father, surprised. David rarely talked about his younger years, about his own dreams and disappointments. "I wanted to be a boxer," David continued, his gaze distant, as if he were looking back at a version of himself that was long gone. "I trained every day, worked harder than anyone else. But then, one day, I took a hit, hurt my shoulder. I was out for months, and by the time I healed, it was too late. I had missed my chance." Eli swallowed, his heart tightening at the thought. "Did you regret it?" David looked at his son, a sad smile tugging at his lips. "I did, for a long time. But then I realized something. Life isn't about the setbacks, Eli. It's about how you get back up after them. You're stronger than you think. This is just a bump in the road." Eli nodded, his eyes stinging again, but this time it wasn't from frustration. His father's words settled in his chest, grounding him, giving him something to hold on to. He had been given a chance, an incredible chance, and he wasn't going to let a sprain take that away from him. The following days were difficult. Watching from the sidelines, unable to join his teammates, was harder than Eli had anticipated. He felt like an outsider all over again, the gap between him and the other boys widening with each practice he missed. But he refused to let himself sink into despair. He did his rehab exercises religiously, iced his ankle, and focused on whatever he could do to stay in shape. One afternoon, about a week after the injury, Eli was sitting under the shade of a tree near the practice field, watching the team run drills. He heard footsteps approaching, and when he looked up, his heart skipped a beat. Messi was walking towards him, a smile on his face. "Hey, Eli," Messi said, sitting down beside him. "How's the ankle?" Eli shrugged, a mix of embarrassment and frustration in his expression. "It's getting better, but it's hard, just sitting here." Messi nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "I know the feeling. I've been there too, you know. Injuries happen. It's part of the game. But they don't define you." Eli looked down, his fingers fiddling with the grass. "I just feel like I'm falling behind, like I'm losing my chance." Messi placed a hand on Eli's shoulder, his voice gentle but firm. "You're not losing anything, Eli. You have talent and you have heart. The important thing is to stay focused, to keep working, even when it's tough. This isn't the end. It's just a test, and I know you're strong enough to get through it." Eli swallowed hard, nodding. The words resonated deep within him, giving him the strength he needed to keep going. If Messi believed in him, then he had no right to doubt himself. Slowly but surely, Eli's ankle began to heal. He returned to light training, careful not to push himself too hard, but determined to get back to where he had been before. The other players welcomed him back with a mix of teasing and encouragement, and even Jordan gave him an approving nod. Finally, the day came when Coach Vargas called Eli over after practice. The coach looked him up and down, a smile tugging at his lips. "You ready to get back out there, Eli?" he asked. Eli nodded, his heart pounding with anticipation. "More than ready, Coach." Vargas handed him a jersey, the bright colors standing out against the fading light of the evening. "Good, because we've got a match coming up, and I think it's time you showed everyone what you're really capable of." Eli took the jersey, his fingers brushing against the fabric. It was just a practice game, but to him, it was everything. He was ready to prove himself, to show that he belonged, not just to his teammates, but to himself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the field, Eli stood there, holding his jersey, a sense of determination settling over him. This was his chance to come back stronger, to show that he could overcome whatever obstacles stood in his way. And he knew, deep in his heart, that he was ready. The day of Eli's first match dawned with a brilliant Miami sunrise, casting a warm golden light over the city. Eli had been up before dawn, nerves keeping him from getting any real sleep. He sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. His mother, Maria, watched him from across the table, a gentle smile tugging at her lips. "Eat, Eli," she said softly, her voice filled with warmth. "You need your strength today." Eli looked up, meeting his mother's eyes. Her expression was a mix of pride and worry, and he knew she was thinking about everything he had gone through to get to this point. The long hours, the injury, the countless setbacks. He nodded, forcing himself to take a bite. As he chewed, his father entered the kitchen, his work shirt untucked and his hair still messy. He had taken the day off from the garage to be there for Eli. He walked over to his son and ruffled his hair, his own eyes twinkling with excitement. "Today's the big day, huh?" David said, giving Eli a wink. "I knew you had it in you, kid." Eli couldn't help but smile. His father had always been his biggest supporter, even when things were tough. He knew how much his parents had sacrificed for him to be here, and he wasn't going to let them down. After breakfast, Eli gathered his things, carefully placing his cleats in his bag. The drive to the academy was quiet, a mix of anticipation and excitement settling in the car. His mother hummed softly along with the radio, her eyes occasionally glancing at Eli in the rearview mirror. His father, meanwhile, offered bits of advice, half serious, half joking, on how to handle the pressure. By the time they arrived at the training complex, Eli's heart was pounding. The field was already bustling with activity. Players were warming up, stretching, or talking in small groups, their faces set with focused determination. Parents and spectators were gathering along the sidelines, their voices mixing with the sounds of whistles and shouts from the coaches. Eli spotted his teammates, and as he approached, Jordan looked up and gave him a nod. "You ready, new kid?" Jordan asked, a slight grin on his face. Eli nodded, his throat dry. "Yeah, I think so." Jordan patted him on the back. "Good. Just remember, you belong here. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." Eli took a deep breath, letting the words sink in. He scanned the crowd, looking for a familiar face, and there he was. Messi, standing near the sidelines, his eyes already on Eli. Messi gave him a small nod, a silent acknowledgement that filled Eli with warmth and confidence. Coach Vargas gathered the team, his voice cutting through the pre-game chatter. "All right, listen up. Today's match is about more than just winning. It's about showing what you've learned, what you're capable of, I want you to go out there and play your hearts out. No regrets. Got it?" The team shouted in unison, their voices echoing across the field. Eli felt a shiver run down his spine as he pulled on his jersey, the bright colors contrasting with his dark skin. He tightened his cleats, lacing them with careful precision, his hands trembling slightly with anticipation. The referee's whistle blew, and it was time. Eli jogged onto the field, the roar of the crowd and the cheers from his parents ringing in his ears. He took his position, his eyes scanning the opposing team. They looked strong, confident. Eli felt his heart rate spike, but he focused on his breathing, trying to calm his nerves. The game started at a blistering pace. The opposing team moved the ball quickly, their passes sharp and calculated. Eli found himself running, chasing, his eyes darting from player to player, his body reacting instinctively. It wasn't long before he had his first touch, a clean, crisp pass from Jordan that landed at his feet. Eli's mind went blank for a moment. The world seemed to slow down, and all he could see was the ball. He took a deep breath, focusing on the feel of it beneath his foot. Then, with a quick movement, he pushed forward, dribbling past a defender. The grass felt smooth under his cleats, his heart pounding in his ears as he made his way down the field. He heard shouts, his teammates calling for the ball, the other team closing in, but he kept his focus. His eyes were on the goal, his body moving on autopilot. He sidestepped another defender, his movements fluid, almost rehearsed. The goalposts loomed ahead, and Eli knew this was his moment. He struck the ball cleanly, his foot connecting perfectly with the leather. It sailed through the air, spinning towards the top corner of the goal. The goalkeeper dove, his arms outstretched, but he was too late. The ball hit the back of the net, and for a split second there was silence. Then the field erupted. Cheers and shouts filled the air, his teammates rushing towards him, their faces filled with excitement. Eli stood there, his chest heaving, a grin spreading across his face. He had done it. He had scored. Jordan was the first to reach him, throwing an arm around his shoulders. "Nice shot, Eli," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the noise. The rest of the team gathered around, patting him on the back, ruffling his hair. Eli felt a warmth spread through his chest, a feeling of belonging, of being part of something bigger than himself. From the sidelines, Eli spotted his parents, his mother wiping tears from her eyes, his father cheering loudly, his fist pumping the air. And there, just behind them, was Messi, a proud smile on his face, his eyes locked on Eli. It was a moment Eli knew he would remember for the rest of his life. The game continued, the intensity never letting up. The opposing team fought back, determined to even the score. Eli found himself running harder than ever, his body moving on pure adrenaline. Every muscle ached, every breath burned, but he pushed on, his mind focused on one thing, proving that he belonged. There were moments when doubt tried to creep in, when he missed a pass, or when an opponent got the better of him. But each time he shook it off, remembering his father's words, Messi's encouragement, and Jordan's belief in him. He wasn't just playing for himself. He was playing for everyone who had ever believed in him. The final whistle blew, and the game ended with Inter Miami's youth team emerging victorious. The score was close, but they had held on, their teamwork and perseverance paying off. Eli collapsed onto the grass, his body exhausted but his heart soaring. He had done it. He had played his first real match, and he had made a difference. As the team gathered to shake hands with their opponents, Coach Vargas approached Eli, a smile on his face. "Great work out there, Eli," he said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You showed a lot of heart today." Eli beamed, his chest swelling with pride. "Thanks, Coach." After the match, Eli made his way to the sidelines where his parents were waiting. His mother pulled him into a tight hug, her eyes wet with tears. "You were amazing, Eli," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We're so proud of you." David nodded, his smile wide and genuine. "You showed them, kid. You showed them all." Eli felt a lump form in his throat, and he swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you guys." Just then, Messi approached, his hands in his pockets, a smile playing on his lips. "Well, Eli, I think you've made quite an impression today," he said, his voice filled with warmth. Eli looked up at Messi, his eyes filled with admiration. "Thank you for everything. I wouldn't be here without you." Messi shook his head, his expression serious. "You're here because of your own hard work, Eli. I just gave you a little nudge. The rest, you did that." Eli nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. He knew Messi was right. The road had been long, and it had been filled with challenges, some of which had nearly broken him, but he had kept going, kept fighting, and now he was standing here, surrounded by his family, his friends, and his hero, knowing that he had earned his place. Messi reached into his bag and pulled out a jersey, an official Inter-Miami jersey with Eli's name on the back. "I think it's time you had one of these," he said, handing it to Eli. Eli took the jersey, his fingers trembling slightly as he traced the letters of his name. He looked up at Messi, his voice catching in his throat. "Thank you," he whispered. Messi smiled, ruffling Eli's hair. "Keep working hard, Eli. This is just the beginning." Eli nodded, his eyes glistening. He knew there would be more challenges ahead, more setbacks, and more moments of doubt. But he also knew that he had the strength to face them. He had come this far, and he wasn't going to stop now. As the sun began to set over the Miami skyline, Eli stood on the field, the jersey clutched in his hands, a sense of peace settling over him. He had taken his first big step towards his dream, and he knew, deep in his heart, that this was only the beginning of an incredible journey. His parents stood beside him, their arms around his shoulders, and Eli looked out at the field, the sound of the crowd still ringing in his ears. He had found his place here, among the grass and the goalposts, and he knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the field, Eli smiled, ready for whatever came next. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes. Give us a like, share with your friends, and be sure to check out the other videos on our channel. There are many more exciting stories to come,